This guy kills your whole family, then you have sex. What were you thinking and feeling about that?
I didn't enjoy it.
How'd you feel about your family being dead?
I didn't want to think.
You heard her say and affirm to me that when they were arguing, she said, just go do it. She gave the command for the family to be killed.
Yeah. I mean, I believe she said that, and that's where she crossed the line, and that's where she's got to be accountable.
It's hard to wrap your head around the fact that your child may be a cold-blooded, calculated murderer, especially when you've shown that child nothing but unconditional love their whole life. Sure, there may have been disagreements like there are between any parent and teenager, but for Terry Caffey to think that his daughter had orchestrated the killing of himself, his wife, and their 2 young sons just so she could be free to be with a boy was unfathomable. The year of 2008 was a whirlwind for Terry Caffey. Starting in February, Terry made the terrible discovery of finding his dad's lifeless body in his house. His dad had been suffering long-term effects from diabetes and heart failure, so although his demise was not overly surprising, it greatly affected him. Terry Caffey lived in Alba, Texas with his wife Penny and their 3 children, Erin, Matthew, and Tyler. The Caffey family was very active at their local church, where Terry was a youth leader. He was actually entertaining the idea of becoming ordained. The 3 kids were homeschooled and were shown a lot of attention, but in 2008, 16-year-old Erin would insist on going to public school. The reason she insisted on this was because of a boy. While Erin was being homeschooled, she picked up a day job at the local Sonic. This is where she met 18-year-old Charlie Wilkinson. Her and Charlie struck up a conversation, and they seemed to be attracted to one another. They became somewhat of an item. When Terry first met Charlie, let's just say Charlie did not make the best first impression. It was actually at the Caffey home. Charlie had been lounging on a chair in Terry's living room with his legs hanging off the side. Terry approached him and said, "You must be Charlie," ready to give the teen a hearty handshake. And Charlie responded with, "Yeah, and you are?" The teen was pretty curt with Terry in their first meeting, and Terry had to tell him to stand up and shake his hand like a man. While Charlie complied, he wouldn't even look Terry in the eye. Erin didn't have the best track record with boys. She seemed to be attracted to the bad boy type, and Charlie was no exception. After Terry and Charlie's first meeting, needless to say, Terry did not have a good feeling about Charlie and the relationship with his daughter Erin. Wife Penny wanted to give Charlie the benefit of the doubt, and Terry tried to keep an open mind at first. Charlie would start to come over to the house almost every night soon after. Some things really bothered Terry about him, but weren't huge red flags. He would have a real arrogant attitude and seemed to offer his opinion on every subject that came up, believing that he knew better than everybody else. He would call Terry by his first name, and he would use curse words, not just around the adults, but the younger kids as well. He was disrespectful, but it wasn't totally alarming, given his age. However, the relationship was moving way too fast in Terry's opinion. When Terry found out that Charlie had given Erin an expensive promise ring, he decided to put his foot down and started to put restrictions on the relationship. But he still allowed them to see each other. But when Penny stumbled upon Charlie's MySpace page, this would prompt the end of the relationship, according to Terry. There was a post where a friend of Charlie's wrote, "Bring your bitch of a girlfriend over for the weekend so you can have sex." There was a lot of swearing and references to getting drunk in his MySpace page. Being very conservative, this was way too much for the Caffey parents, and Terry made Erin end the relationship with Charlie. Erin was very upset and she cried over this revelation, but according to Terry, there was no big outrage over it. Terry thought she handled it a lot better than he expected her to, but little did he know that she had no intention of breaking up with Charlie. They would be together, and it didn't matter who got hurt in the process. A couple days later, on the early morning of March 1st, the unthinkable would happen. 2 young men had entered the Caffey residence around 3 a.m. Terry awoke to hear Penny screaming, and he could make out the silhouette of a man in his bedroom. Several shots were fired. Terry would find out later that in addition to Penny being shot, she was nearly decapitated from a sword the 2 men had brought with them and used against her. Terry was shot several times himself, including in the face, hand, leg, and back. The killers thought that he was dead and went to search for the boys. Terry kept drifting in and out of consciousness. When he came to, he heard his son Matthew shouting, "Charlie, why are you doing this? No, Charlie, no." and then he heard a gunshot. 13-year-old Matthew had been gunned down, and now Terry had realized it was Charlie Wilkinson who had done the deed. 8-year-old Tyler was found hiding in his sister Erin's closet when the killers found him. He was the last witness that had to be silenced, and he was stabbed in the back repeatedly with a sword. Terry would pass out, and then he would come back to again. He realized that the house had been set ablaze. He could barely breathe, but managed to get to his bathroom and crawl out of a narrow window. Over the next hour, he basically had to crawl to his neighbor's house, who lived about 300 yards away. He felt like he was going to die, and he accepted that, but at the same time, he wanted to make sure that he told somebody who did this to him and his family. Eventually, Terry made it to his friend/neighbors Tommy and Helen's house, where they called 911. Terry told Tommy that Charlie Wilkinson was the culprit and that the rest of his family was dead. Tommy would say that there was so much blood, he couldn't even understand how Terry was even alive.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
This is Tommy Gaston. I've got a man that's been shot out here at my house.
Okay, so he's been shot?
Yes.
What's your address?
2320. Wait a minute. Hang on. It's 2063 County Road 2320. 2370.
County, are you online?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you confirm address?
It shows 2063 Ranch County Road 2370 on 911.
Right.
Okay. This is an Emory?
Well, yes, it's Rankin County. That's Alba address.
2063 Ranch County Road 2370.
Okay, so you're in Alba. So I have a few questions that I need to ask you, okay? We're going to get you an ambulance. I need you to stay on the line with me, okay? Are you with the patient now?
Yes.
How old is he?
He's 41.
Is he conscious?
Yes.
And is he breathing?
Yes.
Okay. Huh?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. When did this happen?
I don't know, just a little bit ago, and we've also got a house on fire out here.
And the house is on fire? Is the assailant still nearby?
Are they?
Is the person who shot him still nearby, sir?
Yes, he's right here at me.
You shot him?
No, I didn't. I don't know any more details. I've got to hang up and help him.
Sir, I have to ask you these questions. Okay, they're en route. Is there any serious bleeding?
Yes, he's bleeding.
Okay, is he completely awake?
Yes, he's awake.
Okay, what part of the body was injured?
I don't know, but I've got to go.
Sir, I need to know where he was shot.
Did what?
I need to know where he was shot
I
at.
don't know.
He's right there and you don't know where he was shot?
Yes.
Where's he bleeding?
He's bloody all over.
He's bloody all over?
Yes.
Okay, do you know what he was shot with?
No,
Is there more than one wound?
I don't know.
Alright, sir, I need you to look
Give him
and
a towel,
check
Helen.
so we can help him, okay?
Helen, give him a towel.
Huh? Hello.
This is County.
Did they hang up?
Terry woke up in a hospital in Tyler. It was beyond anybody's comprehension how he could have survived such an ordeal. All those gunshot wounds and all that blood loss. But in actuality, he would have been fine with dying at that point. His whole family had been wiped out. He didn't see any good reason to go on. But then he got news at the hospital from his sister Mary that Erin had survived the fire. Mary didn't want to tell Terry the whole truth about Erin in the weakened state that he was in, and the fact that she was heavily involved. That could actually put him over the edge and kill him. But soon enough, Mary had to tell him the truth. Not only was Erin involved in the murders and the fire at the house, she was the mastermind of it, the ringleader. When Erin was found at Charlie Wade's house, she claimed she was disoriented and that she was kidnapped. But that story wouldn't hold up for long. The police had 4 people in custody from the murders and the arson at the Caffey residence. Charlie Wilkinson and Charles Wade were the shooters in the house. 18-year-old Bobby Johnson was the getaway driver, and Erin Caffey had met with the 4 of them in the car in front of the house shortly before the 2 men entered. The 2 Charlies and Bobby all agreed on one thing at the police station. The whole thing was Erin Caffey's idea. Even an ex-boyfriend of Erin's would come out later saying that Erin wanted to have her parents killed, and this was long before Erin and Charlie had even started dating. Apparently, Erin told a lot of people at her school how much she hated her parents, and she was totally distraught and crushed when her parents tried to keep Charlie and her apart. Of course, Terry had a hard time coming to terms that his daughter had any part in the sinister plot. Erin was being held at the Greenville Juvenile Detention Center in Hunt County, and she had written a letter to him, and this is what it said. Dear Daddy, let me start by saying Happy Father's Day. I hope you get this before then, but I don't need a date to tell you that you have been an awesome dad. You have done a great job, and not for 1 second do I think different. None of this was your fault. If anything, it was mine. I should have listened to you when you said you had a feeling about all this. You have always had a gift of knowing how someone is the first time you met. Anyway, I love you so much. I feel like I don't deserve your love, and that I let you and Mama down. But in this family, we stick together, and I've always loved you, Mama, and the boys very, very much. I never wanted any of this to happen. I was just going with what he was telling me. He was feeding me all these lies. I got caught up in him, and I feel so guilty. That's a portion of Erin's first letter to her father when she was in custody. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Terry was discharged from the hospital after a week of when he was admitted. He would stay with different family members and friends at first because he couldn't be alone. Healing mentally seemed just as hard or harder than healing physically. He felt that God had abandoned him, had turned his back on him, so he was going to do the same to God. He wanted to die, and he had contemplated suicide constantly. He couldn't sleep at night because he was so paranoid that somebody was going to break in and finish what they started. So he would stay up all night with the front door barricaded, and he would just stare at the door in fear and anticipation. During the day, he would fade out. A heavy combination of painkillers and anxiety medication would help put him out. Terry went to visit Erin when she was locked up awaiting trial. They were not supposed to discuss anything surrounding Erin's case, and could actually be charged with contempt if they violated this order. But Terry couldn't resist, and he would use sign language to ask Erin if she was involved. Erin responded, "No, Daddy. I tried to stop it, but it got out of hand." Terry would gradually accept over time that his daughter was complicit in the crimes against him and the rest of the family. But Terry would never accept the fact that Erin had been at the head of this the whole time. Terry believed that Erin had been easily manipulated by Charlie Wilkinson, and that he must have been behind all these awful acts while pulling the strings. Terry to continue to battle depression while Erin sat in her cell with no bond. He would sometimes go back to his property where his house was nothing but a pile of ash. He wouldn't find much that could be salvaged, but he collected what he could in order to preserve the memories of his family. It might have been a marble of Erin's or a toy car of Matthew's or Tyler's, but it would actually be something of Penny's that would not only preserve a memory, but also would save his life. At this time, it was probably at least his 5th time going back on the property, rummaging through the debris. He was at the end of his rope. He was ready to die, and he yelled and pleaded with God to give him a sign to go on living. He said, "I need an answer. I need it today." And in the rubble, Terry came upon the page of a book, and the words on the page seemed to speak to what Terry was going through. The first line read, "I couldn't understand why you would take my family and leave me behind to struggle. I guess I still don't totally understand that part of it, but I do believe that you're sovereign. You're in control." This would be the catalyst that would not just save Terry's life when he was thinking of ending it, but he became excited to share this with anybody. So he started speaking to people about his experience. He would go to different churches in the area and tell about the horrific thing that happened to him and his family, but how he had found God again. He even went to speak at the local women's jail, and he felt so good when one young woman told him she was going to turn her life around and devote her life to Jesus. Wherever Terry went and spoke, people would listen, and a lot of people who had suffered unimaginable loss like him could identify with him and what he was saying. Terry was not used to being alone. His family had been ripped away from him in an instant. He thought he'd be recovering and healing by himself for quite a long time, but that time was kind of cut short. Within 4 months of the tragedy, Terry started dating a woman named Sonia, who had 2 sons of her own. They had actually known each other for years, and something kind of just sparked between the two of them. By August, they were engaged, and on October 25th, they were professing their vows to one another. Many people would judge Terry for dating and getting married so soon after Penny and the kids had died, but Terry has always said that he didn't plan on doing this. But he could tell he was definitely in love with Sonia and didn't want to have to wait. Meanwhile, Terry would have to face the people who ruined his life, including his daughter Erin. Terry had forgiven his daughter though. He loved her unconditionally, but forgiving the young men who shot him and his family would be much harder. He didn't know if he could, but he knew he had to forgive them. Otherwise, he would end up being an angry, bitter old man, and that's not what he wanted to be. Before this went before a judge, the death penalty was already on the table for Charles Wilkinson and Charles Wade. Terry ended up writing a note to the judge asking for life imprisonment for the guys instead of the death penalty. After all, Terry was the victim. He felt like he should get a say in the outcome, and ultimately, the judge went along with this recommendation and spared the Charleses' lives. But Terry wasn't done with them yet. He still wanted answers from them. He wanted to know why this all happened, and he wanted to see if these guys had any remorse. So Terry was allowed to question these guys, one at a time, to see what he could get out of them. He first spoke to Charles Wade, who looked Terry right in the eye. Wade didn't speak with a lot of emotion or conviction, but when Terry asked him if he was sorry, Wade said of course he was. Wade admitted he did the deed because he was promised $2,000, and he needed the money to help in a custody case he was going through. So in order to try to get his own children back, he decided to take the lives of somebody else's children. Wade said the whole thing was Erin's idea. Terry didn't believe him. Terry asked if Erin tried to stop this, and Wade said nobody tried to stop anything. When Charlie Wilkinson was brought in, he was a very different version of the Charlie that Terry once knew. The kid who was so arrogant couldn't even hold his head up to look Terry in the eye, until Terry commanded him to. Wilkinson was crying his eyes out and immediately told Terry how sorry he was. Terry went through his questions, including asking why he did this. Charlie said he did it for Erin, that he did it for love. Charlie also put the planning of it all on Erin. When Terry countered with Erin claiming that she tried to stop it, Charlie got upset and defensive, and again claimed it was all Erin's idea. Terry would next speak to Lisa Tanner in the prosecutor's office regarding Erin's sentence. If Erin was an adult, it's safe to say that the prosecutors would want the death penalty for her, but since she was only 16, that was not an option. Terry didn't want his daughter to spend her whole life in prison, although that is exactly what the prosecution wanted. Prosecutor Lisa Tanner was playing hardball at first. She was wanting 3 life sentences, plus 50 years for Erin. Getaway driver Bobby Johnson was sentenced to 40 years with possible parole after 20. Terry wanted a deal like that for Erin, but he knew with the prosecutor's evidence against Erin, they would never bend that much. In the end, Terry agreed to their offer of 2 life sentences plus 25 years. This would give Erin the chance of parole when she was 59 years old. Terry looked at it as if something for him and Erin to look forward to, even if it was a lifetime away. The offer was taken to Erin, and she quickly accepted it. Erin has never fully acknowledged or taken responsibility for her heavy role in the murders of 3 people and the arson. She later would tell Terry a more detailed version of what happened, according to her. She says that it was not her idea, that her and Charlie were upset at them for keeping them apart, and that they were going to run away together. She claims that Charlie mentioned he had a friend that would kill them. Erin claims that she told Charlie, "Oh, I don't know, that's crazy, let me think about it." The night everything went down, Erin says that the plan was for her and Charlie to just run away. She ran from her house into the car with the other 3. She says they drove around drinking and hanging out for a while. But Charles Wade got very irritable and said he came to kill and he wants his money. Erin says the Charleses started arguing with each other, and Erin finally said to them, "Fine, just go do it." So she at least admitted to her father that she knew it was going to happen. But it has been said by the Charleses that Erin wanted to see the dead bodies afterwards. Erin would not admit to that though. Terry also wonders who would have quieted their dog when the guys broke in, especially considering that their dog barks at everything. It seems like Erin would be the likely candidate for this. And actually, later when she spoke to Dr. Phil, she admitted that she controlled the dog when the 2 Charleses went into the house.